What's up?
Oh, I'm just compiling all the top sports scores, news, and odds so I can make the very best bets.
Me too. BetOnline.ag.
Join today and receive your 50% welcome bonus at betonline.ag.
Welcome to a CLNS Media Patriots breaking news edition of the Foxborough Report. I am Alex Barth, joined by Evan Lazar and Mike Petralia. And the big news of the day, Bill Belichick not letting us have our Saturday off. Antonio Brown released by the Oakland Raiders, less than 12 hours ago. This is now a member of the New England Patriots. So, gentlemen, we'll start with this. What were you doing? What was your first reaction?
Go ahead, Trax.
I'll lead off. I was driving back from dropping my younger daughter off and looked down at my phone at a stop sign, I might add, and I see the breaking news alert. And then I see what followed, and the breaking news was that Antonio Brown from Adam Schefter had signed a one-year deal with the Patriots, and I immediately pull into a parking lot and tweet out, "Here we go, unbelievable." It was unbelievable at first. That's my first reaction. But when you think about the way the Patriots do business and the type of trust that they have in the organization, this was a move that they felt they could pull off and they could corral Antonio Brown. So my first reaction was amazement. But, 30 seconds later, I'm like, well, this figures.
Evan.
Yeah, my first reaction, and kind of going back to what we talked about earlier in the week, Alex, when news broke that Brown was probably on the way out in Oakland. It's all about risk management for Bill Belichick, right? He's like a stockbroker, like he's in the stock market and he's working all these things out. And he's like, what's the risk of acquiring this guy? And is it worth what he could bring to the team? And I think that from the beginning, it seemed like if they could find a way to make those two things align with Antonio Brown, it made a ton of sense from their perspective. I think all offseason, the Patriots have swung and missed at wide receivers, trying to add talent to the outside, to the perimeter, because of the retirement of Rob Gronkowski. They knew that they needed big plays. They needed big plays to come from somewhere that wasn't going to be coming from Gronk. And up until a few weeks ago, wasn't going to be coming from Josh Gordon either. So that was, I think, a big concern for them, was not necessarily when it was 3rd and 5, could they move the chains. They had Edelman, they had James White, they had guys that could do that. It was creating explosive plays through the air, which is the easiest way to score points in this league. So that was really what they needed. And a lot of people kind of theorized that they'd use this kind of wiggle room that they had on guys like Trent Williams and maybe some offensive line help. Adding another receiver and adding another guy that can make big plays for you on the perimeter always seemed to make a lot more sense for this team than adding a left tackle.
Let me jump in here and say something that just popped into my mind, because I'm writing, guys, about does this immediately turn the clock back for the Patriots to 2007? That's what I'll be writing for CLNS Media. The one big difference between this move and 2007 is very obvious. Wes Welker and Randy Moss had essentially a whole preseason and offseason to learn the Patriots system, learn what is one of the single most complicated passing offenses and communication structures in the National Football League. You're asking Antonio Brown, as gifted as he is, and he's certainly a top 3 receiver in terms of skill level in the NFL, you're asking him to come into this system and have Brady and Josh McDaniels pull him on board and immediately become a contributing player. To me, that's asking a lot. And that is the big question mark from an X's and O's standpoint that really hangs over all of this. We all know Antonio Brown is an elite receiver. That's not disputable in this whole arrangement. It's whether or not the Patriots and Josh McDaniels can do pull off one of his all-time coaching maneuvers and get this guy on board in a system that's not straightforward.
But then on the flip side of that, I would say, Trags, like you mentioned, they had the whole offseason, but these were guys where Randy Moss was hurt for a lot of that offseason. He didn't practice a lot, and he was coming off years where he was hurt in
he was
Oakland.
still in the building, Alex, though.
No. You're absolutely right with that. I just wanted to throw that on there. But we get to the point here, and you just kind of alluded to it. Is this a good idea? The Patriots were already arguably the favorite to come out of the AFC, maybe even the favorite to win the Super Bowl. This guy, as talented as he is, there's clearly some risk here. Why do this?
Well, I think to address Trags' point real quick, they did a similar thing with Josh Gordon last year, where he came into the system late. Actually, the season had already started with Gordon, and it's going to be a similar kind of timeline here with Brown. And I think that the talent just transcends any of the other stuff, honestly, in a lot of ways, where yeah, it might be harder for a guy that isn't as talented as Josh Gordon or an Antonio Brown to come into the system and learn it and be able to play at a high level. But those guys are so good that I think that you kind of just figure it out with those guys in a lot of ways. I think that in terms of, was it worth it or why did they do this? They did this because of what I was going to actually write in my argument for signing Antonio Brown about 30 seconds before the news broke.
Right.
And that is when, we're in Miami. We're all in February in Miami. We're all in shorts and T-shirts. Everybody else is watching this game. Freezing cold weather. And Tom Brady breaks the huddle, and they need to go on a game-winning drive to win the Super Bowl. And he breaks the huddle with Julian Edelman, Antonio Brown, Josh Gordon, N'Keal Harry, and James White as his 5 receivers. That's why they did this. You go out and try to stop that.
Let me just throw out there, too.
Good luck.
In naming that offense, you were able to rightfully leave out I believe he's a former All-Pro, definitely a former Pro Bowler, in Demaryius Thomas.
Right. I mean, and maybe N'Keal Harry doesn't, have the rookie year
I'm
that
just
we
saying
all want
that's
to have, and it is Demaryius or something like that. But yeah.
But and the point wasn't to shoot you down and say, no, you're wrong. My point in saying that was a lot of the times, and I'm very hesitant to use the term super team because I know that's the last thing Bill Belichick wants to be defined as. But with these super teams in whatever the sport may be, the Eagles in football, the Heat at one point in basketball and Trags. I know you said you want to keep this on football, but just to make this specific point, a lot of the times what kills these super teams is depth. They go all out on the top half of the roster and they'll lose a player or two and everything falls apart. At least for a good chunk of their roster. The offensive line, maybe sure there's some questions. But for a good chunk of their roster, not only do the Patriots have now the superstar-laden offense, they have the depth to back it up. N'Keal Harry, a first-round pick, fell at the end of your list. Demaryius Thomas, who at one point was considered a top 5 receiver, fell off your list, right? You mentioned James White as the running back. There's still a first-round pick in Sony Michel. You still have Rex Burkhead. You still have Damian Harris. This is not one of those teams that just went out and spent on superstars and didn't actually build a team. They just built a Madden roster. This is a fully constructed team the Patriots have right now.
Right, and with Josh Gordon in the mix, now they're not solely reliant on Josh Gordon to stay on the field in the entire year like they were before. They've kind of hedged their bets with Josh Gordon now with Antonio Brown. Really, they only need one of those two guys to work out. If this doesn't work out with Brown, they're still fine with Gordon. And if it doesn't work out with Gordon, well, now they have Brown. They have both. Then obviously that's the dream snare. This on paper is the best offense in football. And I don't know if it's that particularly close. I think the Chiefs and the Rams are still very good offenses.
And the Saints.
And the Saints too. But on paper, if they can roll out those 5 skill players that I mentioned with Tom Brady, with the offensive line led by Dante Scarnecchia, I don't think that on paper they're the best offense in football, and I don't think that is. I don't think it's really all that particularly close.
Probably isn't, but look, you go into tomorrow night's game, whether or not they had signed Antonio Brown, whether or not all of this drama with Antonio Brown happened or not, the biggest question marks on the Patriots are still how is obviously Ted Karras going to fill in for David Andrews, and how really good is Isaiah Wynn at left tackle. We've seen him as a very good tackle in the preseason. There's no question about that. But when the bullets start flying for real, will Brady have time enough to get the ball downfield to vertical routes to make use of guys like Josh Gordon and now Antonio Brown? That's the single biggest question, right? And I will say the second big question for me, in my mind, on the field, when Antonio Brown is not getting the ball, he's going to be fine with that, because that's one of the keys of any superstar coming to New England and accepting the Patriot way. And that is, we decide when we can get you the ball, and Tom's golden rule, I throw to whoever is open. And will Antonio Brown be able to handle those games where he's double teamed and Julian Edelman's allowed to run free or single coverage under the middle, and teams take away Antonio Brown? How's Antonio Brown going to react to that?
So before we get to the last point that I want to get to, which is kind of the flip side of this signing, there is one, just to put it in context and to have a little fun with this, and just let's say everybody stays healthy. We talked about on paper, and you guys were kind of talking about how this might look. 37.9 points per game, the 2013 Denver Broncos. That's the mark. That's the record. Is that within reach?
Right. I mean, I think to Trags' point, right now we are playing Madden with this team. We're playing fantasy football.
No,
we're putting all the pieces on paper,
speculation,
and we're speculating what this team can put together. I think the biggest thing is that we are making a lot of concessions for Antonio Brown, that all of this stuff that's happened with him over the last 2 years, really dating all the way back to Pittsburgh, is just going to magically go away now that he's in New England. Like, a great point that Trags made was he's going to have to concede some targets to some other guys. In Pittsburgh, he was not too happy about Juju Smith-Schuster kind of being labeled the next guy behind him. And that was just one other guy. Now he's going to have to work in with Edelman, with Gordon, with N'Keal Harry when he comes back. There are some concessions that we're making here. So I think that's important to say. But at the same time, I think what makes Antonio Brown so great for this offense is that he's a receiver that wins at all three levels. You can run him on a short drag or across the middle. You can run him in the intermediate level. You can run him deep. He can do it at all three levels of the game. So that way there, if the offensive line is not having a good game and Brady is under some pressure, then those quick hitters to Brown and to Edelman and to James White are going to be there just as much the same. So they don't need to play this game. This is not, in 07, I think the one kind of, issue with that offense, if there was one that the Giants kind of exploited, was that it was either over the top to Randy Moss or it was short to Wes Welker. Those were like kind of their two staple elements. This Patriots offense with the running game thrown in there too has a way more diversity than that attack had. And obviously we'll see if it comes together like that team did.
Can you almost, Evan, and Alex too, have too many options? And we've seen a lot of Patriot teams in the past have multiple layers of weapons that Tom Brady could go to. And they're not all superstars, but they certainly were all very good options for Tom in terms of the running game and the passing game. And sometimes I almost wonder if you can have too many weapons in an offense, that maybe Madden football looks great on paper, but when it comes to the real world, this is the NFL, and teams are going to scheme and come up with schemes to keep you. Maybe you'll see a lot more Tampa too. Maybe you'll see teams saying, we'll give you everything underneath. We're not getting beat over the top. And I just throw these things out there just to kind of temper the giddy enthusiasm that is rightfully out there, but just temper it a little bit, that, to think that this team can go 16-0 and eventually 19-0, that's a big mountain to climb. The potential is there, but I would just, pump the brakes a little bit.
Yeah, the issue I think is that for other defenses, obviously there's going to be a lot of issues. If you start playing two deep safeties, which you might have to do against these guys now, you're opening yourself up to A, the middle of the field with Julian Edelman, and B, the running game. You move a guy out of the box, you're going to be able to run all over that. And the Patriots are not going to be, Brady's not going to be like, I need to throw for 5,000 yards this year. He'll be more than happy to hand it off to Sony Michel 30 times in the game if they have to do that. So that element is interesting.
Just to jump in here, no, Tom doesn't have to throw for 5,000 yards, Evan, but he does like to throw. And he does like, and he's admitted
every quarterback does.
Exactly. He loves it when the game is in his hands and he gets to throw the ball around the field. Maybe that means, turning the passing game into a bit of a run, a running game for all intents and purposes. We've seen that many times here in New England. But Tom does like to throw the ball. And I have thought at times throughout Tom's career that sometimes defenses want him throwing the ball more than the Patriots running the ball. Because I think they know what they have when they see Tom throwing the ball. It's the play actions. It's some of the other elements of the Patriots offense that when you're able to stretch a defense, which I think the Patriots can do now, horizontally as well as laterally, as well as vertically, that's where I think defenses start to get shredded.
All right, so let's bring it back in here real quick. Now, Patriots have 54 players on their roster. The Brown news not official, but Patriots have 54 players on their roster, so to speak. They are now about like $7 million over the salary cap, so to speak, with the $15 million deal to Antonio Brown. Who's out? Who's the odd man out? Somebody's got to go. And I don't think it's going to be as simple as Gunnar Olszewski, although Antonio Brown, as great as a receiver he is, people forget he's also one of the best punt returners in the league. So he may be gone either way. But it's not just Gunnar. Somebody else is going to have to go. How do you see them making this work? Or does somebody else have to go?
Yeah,
Philip Dorsett would be my guess.
Yeah, same. I just think he's redundant at this point.
Quickly before we do that, I do want to say that I feel like what needs to happen now is like Josh McDaniels and Tom Brady need to sit all these receivers down and be like, we can do something special with this group if everybody just accepts their role and just plays the way the offense
100%.
And if we could go 19-0, we could set every single record for single season record with these guys in this room if we all just accept the fact that maybe AB, you're not going to go for 2,000 yards and Josh Gordon, you're not going to catch 10 touchdowns this year or whatever the case may be, and just go from there. But in terms of what it means for the salary cap, I think the really interesting thing is right now it's only being reported as a 1-year deal by Adam Schefter. And I'm not saying that Schefter's lying, but I think that there's more to come in terms of this contract structure. So there's two kind of like different avenues that the Patriots could go here that I want to outline. The first one is the Darrelle Revis avenue, the Darrelle Revis route, which was they tacked on that extra year, which was an option year that they were never planning on actually picking up. And what they did with that extra year is they were able to stretch the signing bonus out through 2 years instead of just 1 year of the deal, and it lowered Darrelle Revis's cap hit in 2014. It is not that much different than what they did with Tom Brady this past year right now with his current contract. But with Tom Brady's current contract, he has voidable years on his contract. So it's not an option years. Those years don't actually exist. They're fake years. So what they could do is they could say that this deal is technically a 3-year deal for Antonio Brown that has voidable years at the end of this season, which means that it evaporates after the end of this 2019 league year. And that would then allow them to spread his signing bonus throughout 3 years, which would then lower his cap hit. There's ways that they could probably lower his cap hit as low as $6 million this year and fit him under their current salary cap structure. They'd have to move some money around elsewhere to kind of, pay for the roster throughout the course of the season, pay for guys on IR, pay for any other signings or trades that they make. But there are ways to get him under the cap right now where all they would have to do was make a corresponding roster move to get him onto the 53. So I don't think that they need to go out and like trade Devin McCourty or trade Dante Hightower just as a result of trading or of signing Antonio Brown. And I think that there's more to come as to actually how this deal is structured with AB.
Well, and the other thing is it's important to underline Evan's point that the Patriots don't do anything rash and silly just to get a superstar on the roster. That's never been their MO. There are other teams that might do that, like the team that Antonio Brown is coming from in the past, but I give Mike Mayock a little more credit than that. But the point is, the Patriots don't make this move unless they know going in that they can fit Antonio Brown under the financial structure of their salary cap. The other thing I want to ask Evan real quick, all of these moves, once they're agreed to by the two parties, the team and the player, have to be approved by the National Football League to make sure that they fit within the CBA, correct?
Correct. Yeah. And really the voidable structure, I think, is the best way to go because you can extend that one. You could tack on 3 or 4 years of voidable money and just have that whole signing bonus, that $9 million signing bonus, stretched out throughout 3 or 4 years of a contract, even though the contract itself is actually only a 1-year deal. But they might go the Revis route, because if this goes extremely well with Antonio Brown, it does give them a little bit of an option next year to bring him back, at what would be franchise wide receiver money, but it does give them an option. I just don't know if Antonio Brown and Drew Rosenhaus would go with the option year, because I would think that from Antonio Brown's perspective, this is a 1-year deal, reset my market, show that I'm not the guy that I was in Oakland, and go off for 1,500 yards and a bunch of touchdowns with Tom Brady. Then next year I can re-sign the deal that I signed in Oakland to begin with, and kind of start this whole process over again, get my $30 million in guaranteed money back that he lost in Oakland.
And I'm just, throwing stuff against the wall. And this Antonio Brown move sounds different than the Randy Moss move. Maybe Antonio Brown comes to New England and loves it here, and thinks that Tom Brady will play for 2 more years and he signs long term. But this does sound more like a Darrelle Revis deal where
100%.
where he signs here, he shows his wares, he shows his value, and he shows his commitment, and then gets his money.
Yeah, it's 100% way more like Darrelle Revis for everybody involved. I agree.
So just real quick to throw a few stats out here before we wrap it up, just to kind of put all this in context of what the Patriots just did. Go back to 2013. Receivers 1, 2, and 4 in terms of receiving yards in the league, in order: Josh Gordon, Antonio Brown, Demaryius Thomas. One more. Arguably the 2 greatest 6th-round picks in NFL history, Tom Brady and Antonio Brown. One last question before we wrap it up. We'll have a little fun here with this. Antonio Brown's not eligible to play Sunday night against the Steelers. The earliest we could see him is
too bad.
once
That
I
was-
had,
that
I mean,
that
would have
Great
been.
theater.
Yeah.
But I will say, I wouldn't be shocked if we see him in the building. And that's kind of where I want to go with this. Do you think we see him in the building? What I'm picturing is, I think he ends up in Kraft's box. Close game, 3rd quarter. They need to get the crowd alive. If they show Antonio Brown in Kraft's box on that big screen, that building might come down.
Yeah, I think it all depends on, obviously if they can get this official in time to, they're not going to have a guy that's not officially signed in Kraft's box, but
as long as he's officially cut by the Raiders, I don't see why they couldn't.
yeah, I think the great news about it for the Patriots is that Drew Rosenhaus is Rob Gronkowski's agent also, and the Patriots have a pretty long, relationship with Rosenhaus now. So that was part of the other reason why I thought that this might be possible, is because Rosenhaus has worked with the Patriots and obviously a ton with Gronk's deals and kind of understands how they do business.
So do you think he's in the building tomorrow night or no, Evan? You just kind of talked around it.
Of course, I always talk around it. That's what I do.
Well, I'm going to press you now. Is he in the building tomorrow night?
Yeah, good journalism. I would say no. I don't think.
You don't think so, Trags? You think he's in the building tomorrow night?
I do. I think somehow. I think
he wants to be.
I think he'll be in the building, whether or not it's in the owner's box, the field. I don't know, but I think he'll be at Gillette Stadium tomorrow.
I feel like at the very least, maybe he records a video message or something and they play it on the video board, something like that. I think somehow they get him. It's too much of an opportunity to get that crowd going to not do it.
This is absolutely bonkers. I just want to throw that out there.
No.
This is completely insane.
So I just want to say, because I didn't get to top, my first reaction, I was watching a college football game with my brother and I saw it on Twitter. I yelled, "Oh my God." My brother thought I was talking about some mundane play. Like, excuse the hat. I was just planning on watching college football all day, being lazy. But I keep muttering unbelievable under my breath. And it's like,
it is unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
Well, and I'll just leave you guys with this. When I woke up this morning, the first thing I saw on my phone was Antonio Brown demands his release from the Raiders. And the last thing I saw Antonio Brown related on Friday was John Gruden's declaration that, he's ready to go Monday night. He'll be playing Monday night. And I'm like, what did I miss? And the way this story has changed at lightning speed, that's the most unbelievable aspect of all of this. When you go from what happened early this morning, Saturday morning, through Antonio Brown's Instagram, through the Raiders releasing him, and then the Patriots signing him, and all of this in a whirlwind of 12 hours. It's just stunning.
Tregs, I have one question for you. You've obviously, not calling you old, but you've obviously done this a little bit longer than me and Alex.
Sure.
Where does this rank, like, for you? Because this, to me and Alex, is like, this is incredibly bonkers. Like, this is unbelievably wow.
I would say this is a top 5 off the field moment in my 28 years of covering Boston sports. I mean, just because of its uniqueness, because of what I just said, the lightning speed with which this transpired, from him being an Oakland Raider this morning to him, yelling at the Raiders and demanding his release, to him being released, to the Patriots picking him up. In all my 28 years, I cannot ever remember a story transpiring this quickly and coming to fruition. And we're obviously assuming that Shefty is right on the money with this. The deal is done, so we assume that he's going to be.
Antonio Brown confirmed it.
Antonio Brown did confirm it. So well, let me ask you. Pushing 30 minutes.
I consider the source there. I mean, Antonio Brown has said a lot of things over the years.
That's true. That's true. Over the years, over the last week. Let me ask you, because now you got me thinking. I want to wrap this up, but I have to ask you this question. Does this story play out like this? Does Antonio Brown end up with the New England Patriots in the pre-social media era?
Not this quickly. No, it does not.
No.
That's a great question. It does not. The other thing I'll add to that, Alex, was this from the moment he signed in Oakland, was this all driven a secret conspiracy to wind up in New England, shooting himself out of Oakland after he saw what the Raiders were running in training camp?
So there's actually a report going around right now that's essentially that theory, but it actually predates Oakland. That wherever Pittsburgh traded him, his plan was to get out of there and end up in New England.
I don't know
there's like I don't know if it's like half a theory, half a report. It's kind of living halfway between, but there is something going around right now. Jeff Howe has it that Antonio Brown's plan from the end of the season last year was to somehow end up with the New England Patriots.
Yeah, I think as much as Antonio Brown hasn't made it about football over the last month or so, I do think ultimately that he got to Oakland and he started playing with Derek Carr. He started playing with John Gruden, and he was like, I want to play for a contender. I want to win Super Bowls. I want to, be Antonio Brown. I don't think he really liked what he saw in Oakland when he got there. I agree 100% with that.
Yeah, that's what I think a lot of it was as well. And look, his agent, if anybody could concoct a plan to wind up in New England, it would be his agent, like Evan referred to earlier.
Yeah.
Now just get the man a helmet. All right, we're pushing 30 minutes, so unfortunately, we did not have time to cover the Jonathan Jones extension or Tyree St. Louis signing with the Colts, as much as we could talk about those moves. But more Patriots coverage, as always, on CLNSmedia.com, on Twitter, @PatriotsCLNS. The three of us, Sierra Goodwill, we will be in Foxborough tomorrow night. Who would have thought the NFL record-tying sixth banner would end up being a footnote, but that's probably going to be the case tomorrow night. We'll have a lot more Antonio Brown coverage and opener coverage for you then. So until then, for Mike Petraglia and Evan Lazar, I'm Alex Barth. Thanks for watching.